There's Mike Barrett joining us from Charlotte. How did you spend the day off in Charlotte? Did you go to the NASCAR museum with Curtin?
No, I don't think he went this time. We've kind of done that one before, and we didn't do that today. So I took a long walk, got a workout in, did a little work on the game tomorrow, and that's about it, really. Watch some classic car auction for like 2 hours. I can watch classic car auctions for like hours. It doesn't even faze me. There's nothing else like that. I mean, I'm kind of a History Channel type guy, but I can sit and watch like the Barrett Jackson auto auction. This wasn't that one. But I can sit and watch that for days on end, and I guess that's how I entertain myself on the road. I don't watch much TV at home, but when I'm in a hotel room, I tend to.
So I don't want to let the train get off the track about what we're talking about here, but this
it already has.
It's already left the station.
But this classic car auction thing, do say more. I mean, what kind of cars are we talking about?
Everything. I watch, the velocity of the car, the old car, the car restoration type shows. I don't know why. I am so hooked on those things. I'm watching one right now.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. Sometimes you have a way about yourself that you can't really explain it. I guess that's it.
So we're talking, just really authentic classic. We're not talking Pimp My Ride type stuff.
No, but I don't mind those either. But no, I like I like those kind of programs. So I dabble in the garage, not to the extent that these guys do, but I certainly aspire to be one of them one day. Not that I ever will be, but yeah, I'm trying.
I like Pawn Stars.
Yeah, to be continued, MB. I'm going to talk to you about that offline because I like cars.
Yeah,
to be continued.
All right, yeah. I need some help.
All right, Mike. Thanks for joining us from Charlotte. Good night.
Yeah.
Hey, last couple of games, MB, have been kind of ugly starts, but the Blazers have kind of ended up staying the course. They remain unflappable, really, when it comes down to end-of-game crunch time. The Trailblazers still just finding ways to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, the Boston game was obviously – it was different because they were getting great shots in that ball game and just weren't hitting them. And I don't think we probably never – and fans probably this way too – never really felt like that game could have gotten out of control. It felt like they were going to win it from the start, even though Boston was hanging tough and had a small lead. Portland was still getting shots, and you ultimately felt like they were going to take over. I thought last night's game had me a little more nervous – not because of what was on the line and the fact that you could lose to Philly and it would have been an embarrassing loss, but I thought the Sixers played a lot harder than the Celtics did. Okay. And that game had that feel to me that if they didn't drop the hammer with a few minutes left, that could have gotten scary because there weren't many people there, but they were loud. They wanted to see it end. That's a bunch of young guys, 9 undrafted players. Things can go sideways, and it was an awkward game. It was kind of an unconventional. And I think as a coach, Michael, and you could probably speak to this, it's tough when you get in situations where you've got to somehow find a way to get your team to maintain discipline in a game that has, and not let a team drag you out of what you like to do. And it felt a little bit early on, and I asked LaMarcus about that after the game in that interview, just what were they doing that was getting, out in passing lanes. They turn the ball over a ton, which sometimes, if you're not disciplined, leads to you turning it over as well. It did that a little bit. So, the fact they came back and won them both, though, that's the important thing. You can't really start grading road wins. You just take them and move on.
MB, you make a good point, though, that you got to give the Sixers a lot of credit. Nobody likes to play against a team or a defender that is into your body, up on top of you. And the 76ers did that effectively for a good part of that first half, which brings me to the point I wanted to make and ask you about. Is the Trailblazers have come from behind a number of times in this young season, but I haven't ever felt like they were pressing. I remember last year there were times when the Blazers were behind, and I thought they were rushing threes to try to get back in the game. I have not seen this team press. I've seen this team execute on the defensive end and get control of games.
Yeah, I agree. The only game that I think back at, and I think people's minds go here too, was the Golden State home game when, that was clearly one that they lost at the end. And, they didn't play well, didn't shoot well, and still should have won the game. And that's a good sign in some ways, but it was the only game that maybe their execution had really in the last 15 seconds or so just wasn't there. And they had a couple of uncharacteristic, ugly turnovers late in that game that cost them the game. And that's why it was so important, even in the Charlotte game, the home game, to come back and not let, because it's funny, you can be gliding along and feeling pretty good, but if you have a couple of late game meltdowns, all of a sudden that gets in your head. And so it was important in that other Charlotte game that they win the game late. And so now they've kind of got the confidence back in the fourth where they go right back to their bread and butter. They did it in Boston. They did it in Philly last night. Go back to LaMarcus, start force-feeding him on the left block, and let him go to work. And as soon as he does that, and, I don't mind shots early in the clock, but it seems like, and this kind of speaks to what you're talking about, they take more time off the shot clock in the fourth quarter, I would argue, than any other quarter. And that shows a confidence in what you are and what your attack is going to be. And I love that because then you get against a defense that maybe gets impatient. They get swung or overloaded to one side. Blazers pop the ball around the perimeter, and that's when it seems like the Blazers get the most open shots is when they go back to that bread and butter late, take time off the clock, be patient, and LaMarcus does his thing, and even when he doesn't, he's such a good passer out of the post now, they make teams pay. So it's nice to have that to rely on. You don't want to live, coming behind in the fourth quarter, and they've done that some, but it is nice to have that confidence late in games.
Yeah, and the thing not lost in this conversation is that Terry Stotts has gone with guys off the bench to start fourth quarters in a couple of come-from-behind situations.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look back to the Charlotte game. That was Joel Freeland and Steve Blake they each played the entire fourth quarter, and we were kind of waiting for, okay, now the subs are going to come back in, and he leaves them, and he has faith in them. And I think that, I don't think anybody on the bench was shocked by it, and it gives those guys confidence, and it gives the other guys maybe who weren't in there. I mean, we saw Jarrell Wright, who's been out of the rotation. He went into the game in Boston, and even though he didn't put a bunch of threes like we expect to see, grabbed 5 rebounds or 4 rebounds, whatever it was, and he was in the right place. And we know that Terry preaches to his guys, stay ready, you never know when I'm going to use you. And the fact that he'll go with some guys in fourth quarter and leave them and let them have long runs out there, I think that'll pay dividends later on, if not already.
Mike Barrett joining us from Charlotte, where the Trailblazers get ready to take on the Hornets tomorrow. I almost said Bobcats. It's just been a habit of mine.
Don't say it.
I got through the first game without saying Bobcats, but I thought for sure I was going to.
Yeah. Well, hey, I know. I imagine Michael Jordan's going to be watching this game sideline, as he often does. Do you think that inspires the opposition at all? Because I'm here to tell you, I know if I've got the greatest player who's ever played the game sitting there courtside watching me as an opponent coming into his building, I know, and LA's a Brand Jordan guy. I think that this could inspire these guys when they see Jordan sitting there. I don't know, just me.
Well, it didn't last year, but yes, I mean, I think it can make them maybe a little bit nervous at times. But that when you look for motivation in a game like this, not only the fact, I mean, Charlotte's lost 6 straight now, and they're a much better than a 4-11 team, and I think they have some chemistry issues. Lance Stevenson, I know, has taken the brunt of that. He was a guy who, some people in Indiana said kind of drove that team apart, and now he's here, and all of a sudden now Steve Clifford's sitting him down in fourth quarters, and he's getting upset about it, and he's not a guy that keeps quiet about it. But if you want the motivation, you did get blown out here in what turned out to be kind of a 180 game for Portland. They lost here, and that was after the Orlando loss, and that's when the buzz really started about, this season could unravel quickly, and then they got it turned around in Atlanta. But they remember getting whacked good here. I think it was one of their worst losses, if not their worst loss last year, was here in Charlotte. Then they were trailing them by 23 in Portland and came back and won this year. So they know that if they don't bring it, Charlotte has its bread and butter, and that's Al Jefferson, and that's Aldridge inside, and they'll go at it again tomorrow night. So hopefully, Portland will finish off a good, solid 3-0 trip and won't have to come from behind in the fourth quarter to do it.
MB, why has the month of November been such a blessing for Portland over the last, this November 10-2, last November 13-2? Why is it early on in the season? Has it been a favorable schedule?
Let's give the coaching staff credit.
Yeah,
that's it. When you talk about getting off to a good start in the season, you see a well-prepared team that has a great identity and a great confidence. And Terry Stotts happens to be his birthday today. I don't think Terry gets enough credit. I really don't. And we try to talk about it during games. We probably don't do it enough, but this team is incredibly well coached. Not just Terry, but the whole staff. I just think they handle these guys so well. And Terry comes out before games, and he has such a good rapport with his players, and they respect him so much. And I think when you talk about quick starts and coming in prepared and a confident team, every move that he makes seems to be the right one. And I understand they have a lot of talent, and that's easier to say when you have the best players, you have the best coach. But I really think he deserves credit in getting these guys off to great starts and coaching them through some difficult situations in second halves.
He certainly seems to have the Midas touch, and the Trailblazers right now with a whole lot of momentum as they go for number 9 in a row tomorrow in Charlotte. MB, thank you so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow night.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Mike Barrett joining us from Charlotte. Up next, we're going to go down to L.A. We're going to keep it on the West Coast. We're going to talk to the play-by-play man for the Memphis Grizzlies, Pete Pranica. A lot of you know and remember who he is. Of course, he used to be the play-by-play man here in the City of Roses, here in Rip City.